The year is 2012. The previous season had ended with Eli Manning stunning Tom Brady in the Pats for the second time in 4 years. Manning was officially elite, and after losing another Super Bowl to the Giants, the Patriots added rookies Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower to retool their defense. A notch or two down the AFC East totem pole, the Jets were turning into a circus. Rex Ryan was still talking big, but Mark Sanchez was an imposter, and the front office had just traded for Tim Tebow. The NFL's most polarizing player was now a backup quarterback in New York. The media frenzy was unavoidable. But the most compelling storyline of all was Tebow's replacement. After missing the entirety of 2011 with a neck injury that threatened his career, the Colts released Peyton Manning outright, ushering in a new era and cutting ties with the quarterback who had been the face of their franchise for 14 years. Within weeks, Manning signed with the Denver Broncos, inheriting a team that had just been America's favorite underdog. Manning was barely supposed to be able to throw again, much less dominate. And at the same time, a fresh generation of quarterback was arriving. The 2012 draft produced one of the most stacked rookie QB classes in modern history. Andrew Luck, the Stanford prodigy anointed as the greatest prospect since John Elway, stepping directly into Manning's shoes in Indy. Robert Griffin III, the Baylor Heisman winner and track star whose blend of speed and accuracy made Washington trade a fortune to draft him second overall. Ryan Tannehill and Nick Foles, both a level below but billed as potential starters. Little did anyone think they would help shape the decade ahead. While Matt Flynn had earned a lucrative deal in the offseason with Seattle thanks to his 480-yard, 6-touchdown game in Week 17 of 2011. But Seahawks third-rounder Russell Wilson was so good in training camp and preseason that he was able to beat Flynn out for the job. And for better or for worse, other high picks like Trent Richardson, Justin Blackmon, and Luke Kuechly made this one of the most compelling classes of the century. But at running back, Adrian Peterson was preparing to defy laws of biology. Peterson had gruesomely torn his ACL and MCL on Christmas Eve 2011. Conventional wisdom said he'd miss most of 2012, maybe longer, but he was tracking to return without restrictions Week 1. Meanwhile, the New Orleans Saints were in turmoil. The NFL had dropped the hammer over Bounty Game, a pay-for-injury system allegedly organized by defensive coordinator Greg Williams. Sean Payton was suspended for the entire season and Williams was banned indefinitely. Drew Brees, left without his offensive mastermind coach or defensive support, would have to carry the team on his own. And on both coasts, each of the Harbaugh brothers had something special going. John Harbaugh's Ravens, coming off a heartbreaking AFC Championship loss, were chasing a ring before the clock struck midnight on Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. Jim Harbaugh's 49ers were their NFC mirror, coming off a 13-3 season and equally devastating NFC Championship loss. And before any of these stories could unfold, the league itself was a mess. A referee lockout led to replacement officials handling the early season. There was no way this could go well. With football in full swing, I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the perfect way to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can sign up with my promo code BEACHKID, bet just $5, and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Love the thrill of live betting? With DraftKings, you can bet live on star player props and in-progress games as they happen, so don't miss your shot to take advantage. New customers sign up using promo code BEACHKID and turn $5 into $300 if your bet wins, paid instantly in bonus bets. The crown is yours. The season kicked off in New York. The Giants raised their banner on opening night against the Cowboys, but Tony Romo decided to crash the party, throwing for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a win. But on opening weekend, everyone's eyes were on Denver. The football world held its breath when Peyton Manning took his first snap as a Bronco on Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. And in vintage Peyton fashion, he threw for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns. In the third, he hit Demaryius Thomas on a screen that turned into a 71-yard go-ahead score. The same guy that had buried Pittsburgh in the playoffs. But while Peyton was reminding everyone who he was, RG3 made one of the greatest debuts in NFL history. At just 22 years old, he waltzed into the Superdome and gracefully outplayed Drew Brees. 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 40-32 win for the Redskins. The league had never seen a quarterback like him. But Andrew Luck's debut didn't go so swimmingly. Chicago blessed him with his first harsh taste of NFL reality. 3 interceptions, 3 sacks, and a 41-21 blowout loss. And Russell Wilson made his debut for Seattle, taking a loss to Arizona, But he and the rest of the team would only improve as the season went on. However, the group that made the loudest statement was San Francisco. The Darlings of 2011 opened at Lambeau against a Packers team that had gone 15-1 in 2011. Alex Smith threw 2 touchdowns, Frank Gore ran for 112 yards, and the defense helped the Niners control the game from start to finish, winning 30-22. Elsewhere, the Texans got off to a hot start. Behind second-year edge rusher J.J. Watt, Arian Foster, and one of the league's best defenses, they steamrolled their way to 4-0, outscoring opponents 126-56. The Patriots beat Tennessee in the opener, then lost 2 straight, one to Arizona at home, one to Baltimore in an AFC title rematch. New England was not in midseason form to say the least. But neither were the Jets. Chants of Tim Tebow from restless fans got louder with every failed drive. But the magic that carried Denver to the playoffs was nowhere to be found. Sanchez was no good, but Tebow was little more than a gadget player running Wildcat snaps. And if that wasn't enough, the NFL had a new villain, its own referees. The league's choice to use replacement refs amid the labor dispute brought disastrous results. And the breaking point came in Week 3 on Monday Night Football between Seattle and Green Bay. The Seahawks trailed 12-7 with seconds left when Russell Wilson heaved a desperation pass into the end zone. Green Bay's MD Jennings intercepted it, one ref signaled touchdown, another signaled touchback, but the touchdown stood, and Seattle won 14-12. The Hail Mary instantly became one of the most infamous plays in NFL history, and the league instantly caved and reinstated the real officials after the integrity of the game had been publicly humiliated. And the Saints, reeling from Bountygate, were not a serious team. Drew Brees was being forced into hero ball due to a defense that simply did not exist. After going 13-3 in 2011, they started 0-4, marking the steepest fall from grace across the league. While the Cardinals somehow started 4-0, mostly thanks to their defense led by Patrick Peterson, but nobody believed it would last. Adrian Peterson was already finding his rhythm, 2 touchdowns in Week 1, flashes of his old explosiveness, and a Vikings team that sat 3-1. He didn't hit 100 yards until Week 4, but the fact that he was even on the field was an achievement in and of itself. The Texans entered October as one of the league's last unbeaten teams, and in year 2, J.J. Watt was turning into the most destructive defensive player of the century. Through 5 games, he had 7.5 sacks. Matt Schaub was a solid QB at this time, and Andre Johnson was still one of the most physical receivers in football. Houston looked unstoppable until they ran into Aaron Rodgers on Sunday night in Week 6. The 2-3 Packers were desperate to get back to 500, and Rodgers made sure they did just that by torching the league's best defense, throwing 6 touchdowns for a 42-24 win. Meanwhile, Peyton Manning was still shaking off the rust. The Broncos were inconsistent through the first month and a half, but in mid-October they found their stride. On Monday night against the Chargers, they trailed 24-0 at halftime, but Peyton threw 3 touchdowns in the second half, the defense scored twice, and Denver completed one of the greatest comebacks ever to win 35-24, officially announcing themselves as contenders. But RG3 was clearly the league's most electric quarterback. Against the Vikings in Week 6, Griffin accounted for 320 total yards and 3 touchdowns, sealing the game with a 76-yard touchdown run down the sideline. The Redskins were 3-5 on Halloween, but he was the early favorite for Rookie of the Year. And his division rival Eli Manning was showing why you can never count him out. In the Week 6 NFC title rematch, the Giants beat San Francisco 26-3, holding the 49ers to 80 rushing yards and making Alex Smith look like a backup again. 1 week later, they beat Washington thanks to another Eli fourth quarter special. But down in New Orleans, it was a different story, yet an inspiring one. The Saints were buried in the standings. However, in Week 5 against San Diego, Drew Brees broke Johnny Unitas' record for consecutive games with a touchdown pass, 48 straight. He finished with 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. For one night, the Superdome was home to positive vibes, and Brees' record temporarily distracted fans from the fact that the Saints' defense was on pace to give up the most yards in NFL history. Unlike them, the Falcons were running the NFC South. Matt Ryan was spreading the ball to Julio Jones, Roddy White, and Tony Gonzalez with ease. At October's end, Atlanta was 7-0, the best start in franchise history and the league's final undefeated team. And the Bears were winning, but much differently, via a defense that was a better offense than their actual offense. Charles Tillman and Lance Briggs combined for 4 defensive touchdowns in October alone. Through 8 weeks, they had forced a ridiculous 23 turnovers, propelling them to a 6-1 record. And while Adrian Peterson's September was a light warm-up, he began to turn it on in October, rushing for 111 yards per game and dragging the Vikings to 5-3. Every week, he got faster and stronger, but he was only getting started. The Texans entered November with still only the one loss at 6-1, and in Week 11 they hosted one of the year's best shootouts against Jacksonville. Matt Schaub threw for 527 yards and 5 touchdowns, the second most passing yards in a game in NFL history. Andre Johnson went off for 273, including the game-winning 48-yard touchdown in overtime. It was beautiful, but also proved that Houston, despite J.J. Swatt's historic season, could be scored on. That same week against the Eagles, RG3 delivered his magnum opus. 14 of 15 passing, 4 touchdowns, 0 turnovers, and a perfect passer rating in a 31-6 win. The Redskins were creeping toward 500. And 600 miles away, Andrew Luck was building his own case for Rookie of the Year. The Colts had already doubled their win total from 2011 after Week 8, but the game everyone remembers came in Week 9. Luck threw for a rookie record 433 yards against the Dolphins, leading the Colts to a 5-3 start. While head coach Chuck Pagano was away battling leukemia, his young quarterback was blossoming into a star under interim head coach Bruce Arians. But the Patriots were November's team of the month. They actually humiliated the Colts 59-24, behind 3 Brady touchdowns and 2 pick sixes, and 4 days later on Thanksgiving, they went nuclear on the Jets 49-19, the night of the Mark Sanchez butt fumble. After embarrassing teams all month, the Pats stood at 8-3. But were they peaking too soon? Out west, Jim Harbaugh made the biggest gamble of the year. When Alex Smith went down with a concussion, Colin Kaepernick stepped in, and 2012 was never the same. His first start came in Week 11 on Monday night against Chicago, and he decimated one of the best defenses in football, showing off elite arm strength and 4.5 speed. The 49ers won 32-7, and the Smith era was over. But Jim's brother John was managing an adversity-filled season in Baltimore. Reigning Defensive Player of the Year Terrell Suggs returned in Week 7, just 5.5 months after a controversial off-season torn Achilles. But Ray Lewis had gone down with a torn tricep 1 game earlier. However, in Week 12 came one of the most iconic plays of the decade. Ravens at Chargers. Baltimore trailed by 3 with under 2 minutes left. On 4th and 29, Joe Flacco dumped the ball off to Ray Rice. He cut left, evading 3 defenders, dove through a tackle, and incredibly picked up the first. The Ravens won in overtime, and if anything was going to come of their season, it would all be traced back to Ray Rice on 4th and 29. But while the Ravens pulled off a miracle, the Steelers couldn't catch a break. They found themselves in playoff contention at 6-3 after a Week 10 overtime win over the Chiefs. But in that game, Ben Roethlisberger went down. Byron Leftwich and Charlie Batch spent time under center in the following weeks, and Pittsburgh's season was derailed. They lost 13-10 to Baltimore on Sunday night. Then 1 week later, fell to the 2-8 Browns after committing 8 turnovers. But as they fell, the Bengals rose. After a midseason slump dropped them to 3-5, Cincinnati caught fire in November behind Andy Dalton and AJ Green, winning 4 straight to re-enter the playoff race. Their defense, with Geno Atkins and a young Vontaze Burfict, was also among the strongest in football, and at the end of November, they were the AFC's most underrated threat. Similar to the way the Lions were in 2011, Detroit was one of the league's feel-good stories, a young, explosive team that escaped the basement to make the playoffs at 10-6. Matthew Stafford threw for over 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns, and Calvin Johnson staked his claim as the most unguardable receiver alive. Expected to take another step in 2012, the Lions instead limped to 4-7 after an overtime loss to Houston, becoming one of the year's biggest disappointments. Stafford had just 14 touchdowns, but on the bright side, Calvin Johnson had already logged nearly 1,300 yards receiving, and history was in store for him. In New Orleans, Drew Brees and the Saints began to make a run. They surged to 500, even handing the Falcons their first loss of the season. But the optimism didn't last long. In their second matchup against Atlanta, Brees threw 5 interceptions, and the Saints fell to 5-7. Through it all, the Falcons kept cruising at the top, 11-1. While Adrian Peterson's season took an insane turn, he ripped off 182 yards against Seattle, then 171 against Detroit, ripping off 60-yard runs with ease. After Week 12, he had over 1,200 rushing yards, but the best was yet to come. As for the NFC East, the Cowboys kept floating around 500. The The Giants were dominant in October but lost back-to-back games to Pittsburgh and Cincinnati in November. And the Redskins got hot. With RG3 and rookie running back Alfred Morris, they torched Dallas on Thanksgiving 38-31, rejoining the wildcard race. But Morris wasn't the NFC's only great rookie back. Tampa Bay's Doug Martin out of Boise State delivered one of the greatest individual performances in NFL history when he single-handedly buried Oakland in Week 9, running for 251 yards and 4 touchdowns. That game catapulted Martin into stardom and turned the Buccaneers into an unexpected playoff threat for a brief window. He was shifty and powerful for 5'9", earning the nickname Muscle Hamster, which he famously hated. Though Tampa eventually faded down the stretch, the tale of 2012 cannot be told without Doug Martin. In Seattle, Russell Wilson was no longer the polite rookie who slipped to the third round. The Seahawks went on a December rampage, winning 5 straight, including a 58-0 destruction of Arizona, the third largest shutout in NFL history. 1 week later, they dropped 50 points on Buffalo. After that, a pummeling of the 49ers on Sunday night in one of the loudest games CenturyLink Field had ever hosted. Wilson's numbers were elite over the final 8 games, with 16 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. Now that Seattle had a good QB to complement Marshawn Lynch and their elite defense, they were arguably the most complete team in football. Meanwhile, RG3 and Luck were putting the bow on their rookie years. Griffin hurt his knee in Week 14 against Baltimore, and Kirk Cousins stepped in to lead an overtime win. But Griffin returned to finish the year. Washington ended the season on a 7-game win streak, and in Week 17, the eventual Rookie of the Year beat the Cowboys in prime time to clinch the NFC East, a game in which Alfred Morris ran for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. As for Luck in Week 17, the Colts beat Houston 28-16 to clinch the playoffs, and head coach Chuck Pagano returned to the sideline for the first time since Week 4, in a moment that was as emotional as any. Luck set a rookie record with nearly 4,400 passing yards and carried the league's worst roster to 11 wins, while Bruce Arians won Coach of the Year. Houston, once 11-1, stumbled badly, losing 3 of their last 4, but still won the division at 12-4 on the back of J.J. Watt's historically dominant 20.5 sack Defensive Player of the Year campaign. In contrast, Denver was peaking in December. The Broncos ended the regular season on an 11-game win streak, winning every game of December by double digits. Manning threw 37 touchdowns, and the defense, with Von Miller and Champ Bailey, was top 5. The once doubted free agent gamble was now the smartest signing of the offseason and soon-to-be comeback player of the year. Manning was fully back, and Denver locked up the AFC's number 1 seed. But Week 15 was a potential Denver-less Super Bowl preview, instead featuring San Francisco at New England. Colin Kaepernick hit Randy Moss, Michael Crabtree, and Delaney Walker for scores as the Niners jumped ahead 31-3. But Brady brought the Patriots all the way back to tie it 31-31. Kaepernick then responded with another 38-yard touchdown to Crabtree, helping the 49ers hang on 41-34 for a statement win in one of the best games of the year. The number 1 seed in the NFC, though, went to the 13-3 Falcons. Matt Ryan tossed a new career-high 32 touchdowns and closed out the year by blowing out New York and Detroit, who, despite a 4-12 finish, were proud to have Calvin Johnson set a new single-season receiving yardage record against the Falcons, a game in which he racked up 225 yards. Elsewhere, the Giants fell apart. Once sitting at 8-5, they proceeded to get blown out by the Ravens and Falcons, missing the playoffs entirely. And the Bears, once 7-1, fell to 10-6 and fired Lovie Smith. But December was really all about Adrian Peterson. Entering December with 5 games left, Peterson needed 870 yards, or 174 yards per game, to break Eric Dickerson's all-time single-season rushing record of 2,105. Well, he started the month with 210 against Green Bay. 2 weeks later, he gashed the Rams for 212 more, including an 82-yard touchdown. Going into Week 17, he had the Vikings, a 3-13 team the year before, within 1 win of the playoffs. In the finale against the Packers, winners of 9 of their last 10, Peterson ran for 199 yards, including a 26-yard burst in the final minute that left him just shy of the record, but set up the game-winning field goal to launch Minnesota into the postseason. Peterson compiled 1,598 yards from Week 7 on, and finished with 2,097, becoming the last running back to win MVP and showing what it truly meant to carry a team on your back. The playoffs opened with deja vu, the same Cincinnati-Houston matchup as the year before, and the same result. J.J. Watt swatted 2 passes, tormented Andy Dalton, and dictated the game. The Texans' offense wasn't inspiring, but was enough to win 19-13. That evening in Green Bay, a Week 17 rematch turned into a giant mismatch the moment it was revealed quarterback Christian Ponder would be unavailable. Backup Joe Webb started, and the offense never had a chance. Adrian Peterson rushed for over 400 yards across 2 regular season meetings, but this time Green Bay held him to 99. The Packers advanced easily 24-10. Then, on Sunday afternoon, Ray Lewis returned from injury to play his final home game, announcing this would be his final ride, and the Ravens fed off it. Flacco threw 2 touchdowns, Anquan Boldin dominated, and the defense put a stop to Luck's rookie season 24-9. The tone for Baltimore's run was set. As for the wildcard finale, a clash of rookies featuring a compromised RG3 and Russell Wilson. Washington gained a 14-0 lead at FedEx Field, but RG3's injured knee began to buckle throughout the game, and in the fourth quarter, with the Redskins now trailing, the knee gave out completely on a bad snap that silenced the entire stadium. Seattle won 24-14, and Griffin would never fully recover. To begin the divisional round, Peyton Manning and Joe Flacco traded blows at Mile High in one of the wildest games of our lifetime. Trindon Holiday returned both a punt and kickoff for touchdowns, and it looked like Denver would survive. Until, down 35-28 with 30 seconds left, Flacco launched a bomb to Jacoby Jones. Broncos safety Raheem Moore badly misplayed it, allowing a 70-yard touchdown known as the Mile High Miracle. Overtime was about to bleed into a second period when Manning threw across his body into an interception. Moments later, Justin Tucker drilled the winner, eliminating the top-seeded Broncos 38-35 in double OT. Following that, in San Francisco, the Colin Kaepernick experience was on full display. In his first playoff start, Kaepernick threw a pick-6 to Sam Shields on his second pass, but shook it off and then obliterated Green Bay. A quarterback record 180 yards rushing, 263 passing, 4 total touchdowns, a performance that set the expectation he would be the future of the position. The 49ers piled up 579 yards, running Rodgers and Green Bay off the field 45-31. On Sunday in Atlanta, the Falcons were blowing out Seattle 20-0 at halftime, but Russell Wilson rallied back, actually giving the Seahawks a 28-27 lead with only 31 seconds left. Then Matt Ryan, long criticized for shrinking under pressure, delivered the biggest drive of his career. 2 big-time throws and a 49-yard field goal by Matt Bryant to win 30-28. While New England's win over the Texans was the least dramatic. Brady threw for 344 yards and 3 touchdowns. Shane Vereen caught 2 of them, and Houston never seriously threatened. The kind of clinical playoff win the Patriots had mastered. After a couple Julio Jones touchdowns, the Falcons once again took a commanding lead, 17-0 in the NFC Championship. It seemed Matt Ryan and Tony Gonzalez were destined for their first Super Bowl, but San Francisco refused to lay down. Kaepernick settled in, handing the ball off to Frank Gore and letting his defense recover. Vernon Davis reappeared after a quiet season, catching a crucial touchdown, and with over 8 minutes left, Frank Gore ran one in, giving San Francisco its first lead. Ryan had one more shot, 4th down from the 49ers' 10-yard line, but his pass to Roddy White was broken up by Navarro Bowman. The 49ers erased a 17-point deficit on the road and won the NFC for the first time since 1994, as Tony Gonzalez, 16 years into his Hall of Fame career, watched his final shot at a championship slip away. And 1 year earlier, it looked as if Ray Lewis might have done the same. The Ravens lost the previous AFC title game in the most excruciating way imaginable, a dropped touchdown followed by a missed field goal. But here was a second chance. At halftime, the Pats led 13-7, but in the second half, Flacco threw 3 touchdowns in the span of just 10 minutes, including 2 to Bolden in the red zone, while Ray Lewis and Ed Reed held Brady scoreless after halftime. After 12 long years, the Ravens were AFC champs again. The final chapter of Lewis's last ride still to be written. The 2012 NFL season ended with one of the strangest and most unforgettable Super Bowls in history, a family feud on football's grandest stage. 2 brothers stood on opposite sidelines. It was billed as the Harbaugh Bowl, but it became so much more. Joe Flacco, whose postseason had already been one for the ages, sparking debates about whether he was elite, indeed played at an elite level. In the first half alone, he threw 3 touchdowns, a dart to Anquan Boldin in tight coverage, a strike to Dennis Pitta, and a deep ball to Jacoby Jones that broke the game open. Jones's 56-yard touchdown came after falling down, getting up, escaping 2 defenders, and diving into the end zone, punctuating a dreamlike offensive first half for the Ravens. And their defense battered Kaepernick early, limiting the 49ers offense to 2 measly David Akers field goals. By the time Beyonce stepped on stage, the Ravens were in the locker room up 21-6. Then Jacoby Jones returned the second half opening kickoff 108 yards for a touchdown, the longest in Super Bowl history. It was over. The power outage at the Superdome lasted 34 surreal minutes. Fans joked that the NFL had unplugged the Ravens to keep it interesting. Well, when the lights came back on, so did San Francisco. Kaepernick led touchdown drives on back-to-back possessions, a 31-yard pass to Crabtree, then a 6-yard run by Frank Gore. After a field goal, Baltimore's 22-point lead had shrunk to 5 in 4 minutes. The Niners had speed, youth, and all the momentum on their side. But with everything slipping away, Baltimore's veterans dug in. Kaepernick found the end zone with 10 minutes left, but after a couple Justin Tucker field goals, the Ravens still led 34-29, giving the 49ers the ball back for one final drive. Kaepernick and Gore took the 49ers to the 5-yard line with 2 minutes left. The Ravens' defense was gassed, and the 49ers had 4 chances to take the lead. On 4th down, Kaepernick lofted a fade to Crabtree in the corner of the end zone, but Jimmy Smith jammed him just enough, and the pass fell incomplete without a flag. Baltimore took a safety in the final seconds to drain the clock, then punted the ball away with 4 ticks left. Ted Ginn tried to weave through a maze of tacklers but was swarmed at midfield. Final score: Ravens 34, 49ers 31. Flacco was named Super Bowl MVP, completing a postseason with 11 touchdowns and 0 picks, one of the greatest playoff runs ever. And Ray Lewis rode off into the sunset as a champion. The power outage made it weird, but in retrospect, Super Bowl 47 is one of the most underrated of all time. The next season, everything would change. Ray Lewis retired, Ed Reed became a Texan, and Kaepernick would regress. So click here to relive every NFL season of the 2010s.